Cool. All right. So this is the survey. If you go to orlandodevs.com, click on the first link on there, and these are finally the results. And the first graph we put on there, it's probably one of my favorite because it just goes to show like how awesome our industry is. I'm so freaking grateful for it because it's allowed me to do so many things. And I know some of you have been around for a long time and you kind of get it, take it for granted now, the amount of money you make, compared to other industries. Some of you are getting started and you're just like wondering, man, when am I going to be able to, do that and make more money or whatever. But this graph, it just shows us that, I don't know if you can see it well. Let me try and zoom in a little bit. I love the story that this graph tells us. It essentially tells us that the more you persevere, the more you hang around and network with people here, for the longer you've been in the industry, writing code, writing software, the more money you get to make. And that's freaking awesome, okay? Now that's not everyone. I know a lot of people who has been around for like a long time, and they don't do that well because they got kind of comfortable, you know what I mean? I know people who get started and they do amazing as well, but they got kind of lucky. Those things happen. They're always outliers, right? But as we can see here, as you progress through time, you just get to make more money. So on average, if you've been in it for anywhere from 15 to 20 years, you're at around $103,000 a year. That's pretty awesome. If you're over 20 years, on average, there's pretty much 120,000. That's cool. But what I really loved about this year's results was this right here. Why? Because a lot of people graduate from college, they graduate from boot camp. There's always that constant question. How much money should I ask for? It is my first job. I don't have any experience. I don't have all that to bring to the table. Well, last year, we barely had any boot camp, and I wish that the number of respondents were here, but I can tell you for sure, people who have been around for less than a year or 1 to 3 years, the number of people who filled out the survey this year increased a lot. And now we can confidently look at this graph and figure out that, starting out, it's okay to ask for around $39,000 a year. And for some of you, you might think that that's too little. For some of you, that might seem like a lot of money because you came from some other industry that doesn't pay that well. But that's kind of around how much that goes for. And to me, again, this graph, it just kind of goes to show why we're doing all of this, why we're doing these presentations, why we're doing these meetups, why we're collecting this data. You can comfortably kind of look at that and have an idea of what your pay should look like. Now, always, please, take it with a grain of salt. Again, this is averages. Averages are terrible. Don't try to be average. You know what I mean? And all of that, right? This other super duper smart looking graph that I think I'll call up Matt for this one, and he can kind of tell you. But it kind of gets rid of some of those outliers I was talking about. I think, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I should be looking more so at this line right here, right? And so at this line, you can kind of see, average work experience. So here are the years, and then here's the amount of money you make. You can kind of see what that looks like over time. So the story that this graph tells us is pretty much the same as the first one. Like I said, removing some of those outliers. Pretty much same thing, right? You've been around for a while. The longer you've been around, the more money you get to make. That's totally cool. I mean, that's awesome. Now this to me was awesome. This was actually, the way I wrote this it was a pleasant surprise. So we always hear of, when gender comes into play, women, men tend to get paid more, right? That's what we hear. As it turns out, for junior and mid-level positions in our community, women get paid more money. I think our community deserves a round of applause for this. I think that's pretty cool. So, if you're a woman and you're getting started in our field, you're on average making more money than men. Now, again, take it with a grain of salt because the amount of men who filled out the survey was a whole lot more than women, right? So automatically there's some bias there. If you're into statistics and math, which I'm not, you get what I'm trying to say. So take it with a grain of salt. But in general, I mean, that's a freaking great story. The story changes a little bit with senior level jobs. Don't know exactly why, but I think that's freaking awesome. So if you're here, if you're trying to get started, I mean, you're in a great place to be. I mean, you're getting paid more than those men are. Like that is freaking cool. So I think those are the two main graphs that I wanted to share with you. Again, I'm the newbie here. I don't even know I'm up here talking. There are really smart people up here. I think I'm going to call it Matt and Brian, and we can kind of go back and forth and share some of the findings. Again, if you have questions, if questions come up, write them down, because we're going to have a panel in just a few minutes, and you get to ask questions. And actually, Matt, he has his computer on here with all the data loaded up. He can run queries on the fly for you. So if you come up with some really creative thing that's not too hard to run, we might be able to do that. So Matt, did you have anything ready in mind that you kind of knew that you wanted to share? I think the next graph here talks about college degrees. Did you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I can go through some of these. Yeah, I can go through some of these ones. What you'll probably notice about most of the graphs is that they're fairly standard column and bar charts, like histograms and so forth. I did, and I think other people did, to try to throw some machine learning and data science, try to apply some of those techniques here to see if we can find some interesting points, or some interesting correlations to pull them out of the data. I personally threw everything I had at it and didn't come up with anything. So, for instance, when I tried to do, was it job satisfaction by number of years experience, I was trying to just get a decision tree classified for it, and the only folks, or was it by salary? Oh no, sorry, raise. And then the only parts that I found in the tree were people that were under contract or work for contract, so they don't really get a raise. So I wasn't even supposed to have those in the data set. When I took them out, it turns out that your best guess is just that you would have gotten a raise within the last year, because that is actually the best way to classify that data based on the 277 responses we had. So for the most part, anybody that was probably expecting a lot of deep learning or anything like that to be used there, it really didn't apply. The sample set really didn't have any nice distribution or any properties like that, and it was so small that we couldn't really do any sort of projections or classifications at scale. If anybody did crunch the data and that's not true, then please correct me. But yeah, I didn't have much luck with it. So here you see annual salary by college degree. There's web and creative related. We're looking, so I think these are going straight in order, right? Left to right. This is just other related degrees, so this is kind of the bucket for anything that wasn't one of the other choices. No completed degree in the field. That's kind of an interesting one. This one, of course, you probably want to drill down into and see, well, what are they doing? I mean, if they took the salary survey, but they're like a brain surgeon, making probably good money, but you probably didn't need to end up in the bar here. Here's the IT right here, looking good. Computer science and then computer engineering. So I always find it interesting just being a computer science major and considering myself a computer scientist versus an engineer. It's always interesting to see how these things stack up and how people identify themselves as either a computer engineer or a computer scientist. I'd love to talk with anybody after that about why you considered yourself one or the other, if you're one of these two, if it was just because that was the name of your degree, or if there was something else in there between the word science and engineering that you kind of lend yourself to identify yourself as. So, yeah.
I think it's awesome that most of us don't have a degree in the field at all, and while we're not the lowest paid, I don't have a degree myself, so that's why I'm saying we. Like, we as in me, right? Like, we don't make the most money, but we don't also make the least amount of money either, and that's most of us as well. That just goes to say that, to me, that you don't need to go to college. You do well if you do, and if you have the opportunity, you should definitely pursue that. But, if you happen to change careers later on, or just go to a boot camp or whatever, like, there's still opportunity. You know what I mean? Like, again, that's basically most of us. So I thought that's pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. And not just relative to the other ones that you guys, that these folks, other related degree and no degree in the field are, this close to the end, but also just straight up, the flat up number here is in the 70s for median, or average, I think this is. Plus there were 120 out of 277 respondents that had that. So like you said, this, I mean, that is a great number for almost to have.
Cool. So annual salary by coding language.
This was for the bragging rights, right? So here, don't throw stuff. We're just making bar charts here. Okay, so these are in order again this way. You can see what happened was there were quite a few responses in languages where they would only have 1 or 2 respondents. So this is the other category, and it's for anybody that had less than 5, because there were actually quite a few. There's 13, in fact, out of that. So what, 5% or something of the folks entered a language, and they were under 5 people that had that. There were a number of them that were just 1. So you may notice something. Let me see that is obvious from them missing. I can't think of it offhand. Does anybody see one that is obviously missing? It's probably because only like 1 or 2 people had put it in there. I think C was their primary one, but it's not on there. C# and C++ are in there, but C was not. What's up? Go, exactly. Go was one of them as well. Thank you. There were some, yeah. So I can look up the rest of them for you if you'd like to know. So we got HTML here at the lowest end, but there were only 5 respondents that recognized that or identified that as their primary language. What's a little bit interesting, and I'm not making any comment about this at all, is that the left side does seem to be more of the web-based languages, and then some of these ones are used a lot more often in mobile, back-end, and things like that. But that is not to say that you obviously can't write web apps in Objective-C. There's Swift over there, and the same thing, web stuff in .NET and C# and all of that stuff. So, does anybody have any questions on this one? Because that's why I heard everybody start talking.
I do.
Yeah.
So obviously the highest paid is Objective-C. Is it just a good time for everyone to be an iOS developer? No, because then the supply will go up.
There's only 6 responses.
There's only 6 responses, that's true. And if you look over at Swift, right, so Swift it's right at 81. Yeah, a lot of people go back and forth between the two. But
Yeah,
can we, I guess the question was like, can we infer like what the better programming language is to get started today? Like as far as like how much money we can make?
Make more money than
Legacy? COBOL?
It probably needs at least 1 more variable in here just to kind of split it up and do like maybe a clustered column chart or something in here, so that maybe you would know, JavaScript or even Objective-C. Maybe this won't be the case that you have 30 plus years experience in it, but we may be able to kind of break that down into further clusters to know that, well, yeah, there's 6 people, one of them's making 700 Gs and everybody else is making 30 or something, right? So I mean, we probably need another way to kind of drill into this thing and break it down. And that was another one of the challenges that we faced, is just trying to get the sheer amount of questions and everything, just the charts to show, much less to try to be able to get this to be either interactive or drill down or something. Yes?
Question not so much about salary, but more about if we have a handle on just how many developers there are in general in the Orlando, just in Orlando.
That I don't know. If anyone knows of any of the surveys that are
developers in Orlando?
yeah.
I know, so on our Slack channel we have like 2,000 people registered on there. And I don't think that's even close to like being representative of the pool of developers in Orlando. I know a lot of people who say like graduate from UCF, they'll go to like Lockheed Martin, and most of them, from the friends that I made when I was in school, they don't really get integrated with the rest of the community. They'll just, stay on that side of the world or whatever. And it kind of makes sense, right? Like if you're at Lockheed, you can't really talk much about the things that you do. So you can't really go around sharing much. You know what I mean? So it kind of makes sense. But all that to say, yeah, I have no idea.
No, it sounds like it could be somewhere between a 5 to 10% sample size. Maybe.
I hope so. I hope it's smaller than that, and there are more people out there that we can go find. But a place that we might be able to go look at is if there's open data for the city and or the census and things like that, right? If people identify themselves as a particular job, we may be able to kind of infer that better. From here, it's invite only, a lot of word of mouth and everything. I don't think we have a chart on how people found out about this, but there were a number of different answers. Some people was just like, Sergio told me, and then some people heard about it from, their other friends or a professor or something like that. So, yeah, that being not like we didn't crop dust Orlando and hey, everybody, do that. So it's really hard to guess what percentage that is.
So I know this data is going to be different from last year, but something like this graph, I guess this would be a request. How difficult would it be to see what last year's numbers were to this year's to see if the languages are becoming more in demand, people are getting more?
Yeah, the year-over-year stuff was something we absolutely wanted to do, and but even up till today, we're just trying to get this year's data doing it. But absolutely, this same set of graphs with year-over-year that way, and hopefully for the future, doing that over time too. These little clusters, like this one by 2016, 2017, and then into that one, because those will be interesting individual trends for these answers. One of the things we'll have to do is try to find. This was the second. Is this the second survey or third?
Third, but the first one didn't have much data.
So people are still trying to get the question set down, so to see if there are some things that are maybe correlative, but not causative, of course. But to be able to find some interesting things, ask some interesting questions that might kind of tip the scales versus just like I do JavaScript, so you're making 76. Some other information that we might be able to find correlations between.
Also, the Stack Overflow survey has a lot more people responding. So kind of comparing the two to see where they line up and where they don't can be interesting also.
Yeah, he's got a whole Zeppelin notebook that I've got pulled up here, and he's done the graphs like kind of side by side, right? For a couple things like salary and so on that kind of compares the ODEV's responses against the Stack Overflow for the US. So those are kind of interesting too. But I think that's when we do our like takeaways from this thing, one of them I would think would be year-over-year stuff, and try to get a good core set of questions that are repeatable so that we do have the same results. Because this year there are a lot of more good questions, but we didn't have the historical data to even match it against. But you're right, this is a great one for that.
I have a quick comment. I think it's interesting how, still with HTML, the average was around 65K. The highest paid was 96. If you really think about it, it's not a huge difference, right? And when you consider the previous graph, where we found that most of us don't even have a college degree in the field. I mean, I know somebody who just graduated from law school and they started out making 45K, right? So even with the lowest paid, right, which is HTML, it's still an average of 65. Like, that's still pretty good, given rest of society, right? Amongst us here, we kind of get, take things for granted because we're developers, right? But in general, as far as all of the population is concerned, like we're still doing pretty well. You know what I mean? So I thought that was pretty exciting overall.
But just found it interesting that on the whole, people who were more satisfied with their job tended to make more. You could be happier because you're making more, or you could be better at your job because you're happier, or it might not even be correlated, but still an interesting chart.
Yeah. Fancy. Who's gonna take a stab at that one?
All right. So this is excuse me. This is like a heated tree map? Was that the name of it? Heated tree map. And this is for job satisfaction or average satisfaction for different languages, right? So I'm trying to picture up here. So and then it's also by years experience? How is that broken down?
So it was popularity. So JavaScript is still like the most popular, right? But then it divides it up by groups of age, and if we look at the legend up there, like the more blue, then the happier, and
All right, I just wanted to know these guys. So these are actual age of the person, right?
Groups, yeah.
So this huge block here, like you said, is JavaScript, and then you're doing them broken down here. So the gray is just kind of in the middle. You can see looks like the JavaScript folks as a whole are fairly happy. Then you come over the C# folks, and they got a lot of the dark blues. That's really good here. Kind of come down in these places. The Objective-C folks are pretty happy, but they're making 93K, right? So they're good. Here's the Go folks who didn't didn't have a large enough number of respondents for some of the other graphs, which is too bad because it looks like it's a pretty good time to, or you feel pretty good about being a Go developer if you are one. And then there were some in there. There's so Java's got like an orange spot here. I didn't see any. This one gets pretty close to red. This Cold Fusion one here. And then the SQL as well, SAS. Some of these are explainable, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just kidding. So I actually hate Java developers, so I hope that's not me. All right. Any questions on this one? There's a lot of info in there, but the idea just obviously to be able to.
I think Jock had pointed out that most people in the age group between like 26 and 30 are pretty unhappy no matter what they're working on. And if you're young, like if you're between 18 and 25, you hate C#. But if you're old, you absolutely love it. So like, there's no Cool, so this was an interesting one.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. This is called the logistic regression plot, and it's just trying to classify these. These are all the instances here of years of experience here. So like at 0, this is like less than 1 year, and then this is how much you're making, and then the blue is if you are not a manager, and the green is if you are a manager. So what this line is trying to do is just trying to draw the best line to try to classify most of the instances into one or the other. What's kind of interesting to me is that these, I believe, they could each have their own lines because they're their own set of data points, but they're right along the same line, which means that on the whole, on the average, that your trajectory, if you will, is pretty much the same whether you are a manager or not. Now that could be, you see a lot more of some of the outliers that are here. I, to be honest, would have expected more of the outliers out here. Some of the managers that may just be making just mad ducats from just being there at some company for 30 years or something like that. But you can see just as many of these outliers as a developer up here making really good money, and about 20. These are coming quite a ways off the line, but. For the most part, at least on the early side, this is kind of sitting tight with this line. So I mean that's a pretty good correlation there. There was we could maybe later show that violin plot if it helps anybody out, but a violin plot's kind of like a box plot, but it's like smoothed out. At least that's kind of the way I describe it. And you can see that on this end of things, things are kind of fatter and tighter. A lot more of the data seems a lot more closely correlated here on the left side. And then after you get past a certain amount of years experience, it's kind of like Wild West. I imagine most of that has to do with the fact that your career could take so many different paths by then, if you have that. Yeah. So you see these bulbs right here are kind of fatter. You imagine a box plot that has been, smoothed out with all the examples that are in here. But then, once you get out past 12 years, who knows? You could be making that much, you could be making that much. It's like, it's thin and, all over the place. Whereas these ones are a little bit more tightly clustered.
And someone who is negative.
What's that? Someone who's negative. Boy, that's a tough one. Right about 16 years, man. You better retire. You might bottom out.
You're paying to,
Yeah.
to have a job. Cool. So I think these were it, like as far as like correlations that we found. Later in the blog post, you can check out, it's basically the answers for each of the questions asked. So this one was kind of cool. Most respondents identified themselves as full stack web developers. That was 141 of them. The Joel test results, this was pretty cool. Kind of seeing what kind of development practices their companies or their teams take part of. And source control has become pretty common, but kind of everything else kind of starts like.
The interesting thing about this one, this is the 50% line.
Yeah.
One of those categories has over half the people doing it.
Right.
Right. And this is for the Joel test for like project maturity or something.
Yeah.
So only half the respondents are doing that. I mean, under half the folks are using the bug database and so on and so forth. 38% have a specification. The rest of us are just making it happen.
Just writing code.
Right.
Yeah. So this is a good one right here because, essentially what this graph means is like more of this stuff that's green on your team, like overall, the better developer you or your team kind of is, or better the quality. So definitely look out at this graph and try to identify a couple of things that you could implement at your team. I'll rush through these because pizza just got here and people are going crazy. Yeah, I'll let you all go through this. Most people are pretty satisfied with their jobs. Most of them identify as senior. But if everyone's senior, then is anybody really a senior, right? No. So the similar graph to what we already looked at, educational background. So more of a breakdown, like self-taught, some college, masters. There's one PhD, which is pretty cool. Do you hold a traditional degree? I just kind of fly through them, see if anything else screams at me. I was pretty interested on the benefits one, so like vacation. A lot of people either get 2 weeks of vacation or more than 7 or unlimited. Like most of us basically get a lot. But then there's a good 7% that just gets 0, which sucks. Sorry. Healthcare. I thought this one was interesting as well. It's usually like either you get nothing or you get a lot. But like, yeah, only 10% between like 1 and 25. Benefits, so 401k pretty much everyone has. Match on the 401k, same thing, but everything else kind of starts, not all that much. Non-monetary perks, so does your company provide you with a laptop, monitors, educational allowance? Let's see. A lot of people work at small businesses or startups, really. Like if you combine these two, most of us work for smaller organizations in theory, and they're the 33% that's basically very large ones. And you can kind of see that again here, like with the number of employees at the company. So anyway, bunch of interesting data that you can check out yourself. And yeah, if you need help, if you think you're super underpaid or whatever, come up with questions. We're going to have these 2 guys sit up here, kind of answer questions about the data. But we'll also have, like I said, Alex and Austin sit up here and kind of give you a perspective from the employer side. What is it that they're looking for? So if you have any questions, if you know somebody that has an awkward question that you might not want your coworker to know, you're able to ask that as well. You could write it on a piece of paper. I'll read it all out for you. I don't mind. But yeah, so let's take a quick 5-minute, get some more pizza.